Yeah, we're recording.
Right, thank you. Welcome and to everybody joining us for this Community Services Committee meeting on the 17th March 2021. I'll start with the formal part of the agenda. Any apologies for absence?
We've got no apologies, Chair.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest? Don't think so. Okay. Item 3, Chairman's report on urgent items. I don't have any. Do you have anything, Carl?
No, I've got no urgent items, Chair.
Thank you. Public questions in accordance with Standing Order 22.
None received, Chair.
None received. Then we'll look at the minutes of the Community Services Committee meeting held on the 11th of January 2021, which have been circulated. Can I sign those as an accurate record? Can I show of hands? Okay, thank you. I'll do that separately. We're now moving on to item 6, which is minutes of other meetings referred to this committee. So the first one is we're receiving minutes of the allotments working party. Any comments on those? No, thank you. To receive the minutes of the Youth Engagement Working Party. Any comments on those? No. And then there's one in exempt business, which we'll take at the end. So we now move on to officers' reports. And as we have someone from the Silver Cup who's going to speak to us about this item, we'll start off with item 7.1, which is on page 11. Okay, Michael, is it?
Yes.
Would you like to say what you'd like to say? I think you've got about 3 minutes.
Sounds good. Hello, everyone. Okay. Good evening. Thank you for letting me in to the meeting. Effectively, the Silver Cup car park, or what's been used as a car park and secondary drinking space for as long as I've known the building. I grew up in Harpenden. My parents had 2 businesses here. My business partners from the town as well. Is a little bit of an eyesore. It's an impractical car park in its current format. And since we've taken on the business from last year, we took over in the first lockdown for our sins. So it's been a bit of a rocky first year trading for us, but all in all, things are going well. The one thing we've noticed, and I think from the last year, you'd all appreciate that outside space is paramount to a successful hospitality business. The space is really poorly designed at the moment. It floods fairly regularly. It can only fit 2 or 3 cars in, kind of conveniently. The rest of the time you have to trade spaces with each other. So we essentially would like to, we're proposing to ask you for permission because it is actually your land. Historically, it was used as a road, and my mum remembers that from when she was a child. So we're going back a few years then. It was a road, so it's owned by you, and you lease it to Charles Wells, who then lease it to us as a lessee of the building. So yeah, we're effectively proposing to convert 2/3 of it into a substantial beer garden. For cover would allow us to seat about 40 people. It's basically sandstoning it, putting in some drainage systems so that it doesn't flood and keep people skidding around. And there's kind of 2 or 3 reasons for that. Firstly, and from a selfish business perspective, massively increases our trading space in the summer months. Secondly, it cleans up the building, makes it look a lot better. And kind of I think you've all driven from St Albans into Harpenden. You look to your right, the cricket club's been redone in the last few years. The commons look beautiful. You look to the left, Silver Cup car park looks a bit dreary. So I think it would really substantially improve that kind of journey into town. We are going to repaint the building if we get permission to do this or not. But we need your permission to go to St Albans District Council to then apply for planning, as we do want to change the surface of the car park, as at the moment part of it's tarmac and part of it's gravel. We want to sandstone it, put sleeper beds in, which will make it a little bit more secure for kids and families. As you know, we're in between a main road and Leighton Road. So Leighton Road's a little bit of a racetrack sometimes, and the main road is either chock-a-block with traffic, or people like to rip off the roundabout up towards St Albans. So sleeper beds will just make it a little bit more secure. We've then put in some umbrellas that can be up in the summer, or used as kind of rain shelter in the winter, that would be kind of retractable and removable, and really just smarten it up. I don't know if you guys have been in since Matt and I have taken over the business. If any of you have, or if you haven't, I please hope you do. Or if you fancy a takeaway burger in the next few weeks, please pop down at the weekend. But we did a substantial refurb the first lockdown internally, put in a very nice restaurant. Matt, my business partner, is an extremely good chef. We're two local lads trying to make what I know is a building that hasn't really ever kind of kicked on and been a really successful pub. We're trying to change that. And I think the only thing that we truly believe we can't compete on at the moment is our outside space. The Fox has got a beautiful garden. The Cock has just redone theirs and put a massive tarmac in theirs. The George is lovely. The Cross Keys has got a substantial garden. The White Horse has got one. We've got a tatty car park. As much as we like to polish it and put picnic benches in and umbrellas, you can't really polish a turd. So the thing for us would be to, we just want to, once we've got that, we don't believe there's another reason to go to another pub in Harpenden, you know?
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for that.
No worries.
Before we start our discussion, there was just one small factual error. This is nothing to do with you. This is on page 17, clause 1. It gives your address as Southdown Road, which of course is wrong. It should be 5 St Albans Road. That dates from 2009. So I just mentioned that in passing. Okay. For myself, I don't have any objections to this. I think it's a good idea. I'm generally pro-business, pro-enterprise. What do my colleagues think? Lisa.
I would certainly be in support of it as well. I must admit, I don't have a problem with the concept at all. A couple of things that I did question was, you've got steps up onto the grass, and I just thought, if you're encouraging families, etc., into the area, is that to be gated? Is there going to be some sort of barrier to stop children running onto the grass and then out onto the road? That was just one query I had. But yes, otherwise I thought I quite liked it. I liked that you're retaining some of the original sort of trough feature. It looks like it's being sympathetically done. So yeah, I think it would be great.
Right, thank you. Any other comments at all? Don't know whether I can see everybody on the screen. So if
Councillor Cousin.
Councillor Cousin.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Con. So yes, I haven't been to the Silver Cup for a long time. I understand that the restaurant is very good. Are we taking any account, or is this a separate thing for licensing, around the fact that you might have got, for example, 40 people congregating outside, drinking, very close to lots of residential houses? I mean, I'm not against it, but I'm just trying to work out whether that is a factor in this discussion, or is that effectively for the licensing committee or the planning committee?
I think that will certainly be taken into account by the licensing committee when this one comes up for sure. And just for your information, it doesn't affect anything, but I chair that committee, at least I think until May anyway.
Chair, if I could just add something to that, Chair, as well. So
yeah, please.
What the committee's been asked to do this evening is provide its in-principle support
Yes.
to the idea. So the reason why we're suggesting in-principle support is because we recognise there are lots of things that that Michael will have to go through should we receive the in-principle support. So licensing is one of them, but also the planning application,
Yes.
and also application to the Secretary of State under the Commons Act. So
Yeah.
the reason why we would give in-principle support at this stage is that, and there's no reason to suggest that this would happen, but should the plans go forward under those kind of mechanisms be different to what we're considering tonight, the council would have its opportunity to comment at those various stages. So it would be an in-principle support tonight, but recognising that at different stages throughout the process, we will have the opportunity to comment further should we wish to.
Yes, thank you. I mean, I think it's also worth noting, I'll come to you in a second, Dave. I think it's also worth noticing that, when Classics on the Common is in operation, the car park area there tends to get full of people, drinking and so forth, and admiring all the fancy cars coming past. Seen that a few times. Councillor Heritage.
Thank you, Chair. You jumped the gun a bit there. I was going to say the same thing, only in respect of normally at Classics on the Common, and sadly, Michael, you haven't had one yet. Well, I'm sure you know about it. They usually park a double-decker bus on the grass there as an extension to your premises. I don't know whether this would prevent that happening, or whether this would supersede the need for it. It's a focal point on the day for the exhibitors.
Am I allowed to respond? Sorry.
Yes, please do.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I fully remember the double-decker bus. Our view would be that the double-decker is used as a mechanism because the facility, or my view is that because the facility isn't licensed to have bars and things like that outside it. I think if we haven't had the chance of doing a Classics yet, we would have, or granted licensing permitting, we would have multiple drinking outlets and probably spread them out rather than trying to pile people through a bus. They could certainly potentially park it across the front of the car park, or where the two spaces are going to be kept. You could potentially fit a bus kind of on the edge of it and then have multiple drinking outlets to spread people out. And actually, you'd probably in that way, from a business perspective, serve more people because you'd have a better flow of traffic. It'd probably look less glamorous, but you'd probably serve more people more efficiently. And it being kind of sandstone rather than mud would enable people to kind of, it would be a better experience rather than walking muddy boots all through the building and things like that. We haven't had one yet. Unfortunately, last year, would have been nice, but fingers crossed for this year. And I have spoken to the Rotary Club, and I'm keeping an eye on when we might be able to get one going.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that. Any further comments, Carl?
Yeah, just to add a point of clarity, Chair, for the committee. So the grass area isn't actually subject to the existing tenancy arrangement, and the annual parking of the bus or other use of the green space is done by an annual permission. So just to clarify that, it's a separate arrangement to the document that you've got in front of you.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments from members of the committee? Well, what we're asked to do under 2.1 is to consider whether the committee wishes to give its in-principle support to this proposal. I propose that we do. So all in favour of that? Okay, thank you very much. So that's what we'll do.
Brilliant.
Okay, you're welcome to stay and see the rest of the meeting, or if you've got better things to do.
I don't know about better, but thank you very much for your time, guys, and hopefully see you in the business sooner rather than later.
Okay, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Bye.
Right, moving on to item 7.2, which is page 31. the forward planner and the resolution tracker. So do you want to take us through this, Carl? Is anything noteworthy other than?
So, Chair, I think we're happy to take any questions should there be any, but I don't think Phil or I have got anything to add at this stage.
Okay. Just looking down the list. Does anybody have any comments on these two items? Committee members. Councillor Cowley.
Thank you, Chair. And unless I've gone completely mad, I can't see anything on here about the management plans for the new park. Well, not new parks, the parks we're taking over at Oakley, I think it's Oakley Road and Carver Close in the south. Is there, will that come to us at some point in the future? It's just not on the forward plan because we haven't taken them over yet, was my question.
Yeah, I think what you're thinking of is the ones in the north part of the district rather than Oakley and Parva, because I think we've got those already, haven't we, Carl?
Chair, no, we haven't got those ones as yet, but
okay.
the answer to the, there's two parts to the answer, basically. So council, or there'll be a subcommittee that will be looking at the Rothamsted Park Management Plan, which is likely to, that subcommittee will be tasked with producing the plan, and that's likely to go directly to council, I would imagine, as sign off, given the kind of the importance of the park in the first instance. However, the committee will be the responsible body looking at that further down the line. The second part of the answer is that we will also be producing some lower level management plans for those smaller open spaces. And whilst we know that we are going to be producing that, I just don't think we've probably put two and two together and found its way onto the forward plan. So the plan is that we will be taking first 6 months owning these additional assets to really understand them and to develop the plans. So I would imagine that, being realistic, the November meeting would be a good time to slot in some new draft low-level plans for the smaller open spaces. Okay.
Will we do those with Rothamsted Park as a sort of like a package deal?
So, Chair, probably not. No, I think I think the size of the job with Rothamsted Park, that needs to have a kind of dedicated kind of focus. We do have a number of other smaller open spaces where we've got almost a template approach to developing management plans. So we will just apply our current approach to those other spaces and bring those drafts to this committee.
Okay, so we do Rothamsted Park on its own because of its size and complexity, and all the others as a package, more or less.
Yeah, that's correct, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other comments on the forward plan and tracker from committee members? Okay, so I'll take the two recommendations at 2.1 together. We're noting and approving the forward planner, and we're noting the resolution tracker and approving the removal of those resolutions marked complete. All in favour? Okay, thank you very much. That's agreed. Now, moving on to 7.3, which is on page 37. So, I'll mention it in passing, but if we look at the spreadsheet on page 40, it's worth just remembering that the items in red are good. You know, they're not sort of like overdrawn. It's this strange accounting convention we have in local government. So do you want to take us through this one, Carl?
So again, Chair, we are very, very happy to take any questions on it, but there isn't anything in particular that we would highlight that's not already in there. I mean, I would just say that the adverse variance of £7,000 for this committee is really offset when you consider the full council position, which is a positive position of around £20,000. So the £7,000 is just for this committee. The council position is much more favourable than that.
Yes, and the £7,000 is only about 1%, isn't it?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, so that's not bad given the uncertainties of this year. Any comments from committee members? I can't see everybody on my top line, so if
Yeah, I'm not seeing anybody, Chair. I think everybody's is okay.
okay, so we're just noting that report then. Okay, thank you. Right, now move on to 7.4, page 41, use of reserves. Again, is this something you want to comment on, Carl?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Just by way of reminder of the context to this. So this item comes forward as a result of the budget setting process earlier this year. So you'll know that council agreed that we would set our budget. We would essentially have a gap of £75,000 or just below that would need to be covered by capital or earmark reserves. So what this report does, this report sets out the planned approach to how we are going to deal with that £75,000. And so you're asked to approve that approach. And you remember at the time of this going through council, certainly officers were very keen that it was this committee that took the decision on how they wish to fund the different elements of the management plans, given that it's your area of responsibility. So broadly, we will be doing three things, or suggesting three things. We have a small amount of funding that is being recommended to be covered by capital reserves, and that's where it relates to fencing or pathways. We will be utilising £38,000 of the existing earmark reserves from Commons and Greens line, and we'll be utilising a further just short of £27,000 from the town centre improvements earmark reserves that will be reallocated to support the improvement works within the plan for this year.
Okay, and then hopefully when our budget comes back to more normal levels, as it were, at least on the revenue line anyway, presumably we'll adjust the reserves back, will we? So that the items that we're taking out of these various reserves will effectively be put back in so that those activities can be completed.
Well, yes, Chair, certainly from an officer point of view, I hope that is the case. It's obviously it will be a decision for council when it comes to the next budget setting, because as it stands at the moment, there'll be a £75,000 gap in next year's budget to cover these items off. I just add one more thing on that. Actually, it's worth noting that in my view, this committee has always been very good in the way in which it oversees the finances. Pretty much any decision that's taken through this committee has always been reference to the resource implications, and there is a clear link between the management plans, the budget that we have, and the improvement works that this committee has approved in the past. So this just follows on from that.
Okay, thank you. Comments from committee members. Councillor Heritage.
Thank you, Chair, again. Can Carl confirm whether we ever received any money from District? District was given money for town centre regeneration, which I understood was going to be shared out. Did we ever actually see any?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So up until 48 hours ago, the answer to have we actually seen any would have been no. But we have actually seen some now in that it's actually some money has reached our accounts, which is really good. So I think the funding, Chair, that's being referred to is part of the European or the EU Recovery Fund for High Streets, of which there was an allocation to every local authority. And in Harpenden, we were able to ensure that some of that was passed down. So we received an allocation of just over 22,000, of which we've spent £13,000. The way in which the funding works, it's retrospective to draw it down. So you have to incur the costs to start with, and then hope that the criteria doesn't change down the line. And I say that because unfortunately a few times the criteria has changed. So we've purchased things on the basis of something being included or eligible, and then it's gone in and out and shaken all about. And so we've got an allocation of £20,000. We've spent 13. We are expecting to get all of that back, but I believe actually we've drawn down about 4,600 as of yesterday. I think it arrived in our bank. So yes, we have drawn some down. We used it very sensibly, and hopefully we should get the rest.
Is that the amount we were expecting?
I think, Chair, my opinion is it was a fair amount based on the
Okay.
amount of money the district got. If you split it by population, it was a fair amount. If you
Okay.
split it by businesses, it was a fair amount as well, I believe.
Sorry, just apologise for my suspicious nature.
That was why
Any-
my question.
Sorry.
That was why I raised my question.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, okay. Any other comments from committee members?
I can't see anybody indicating,
no.
Chair.
Can't see any. So we're asked to approve the funding of the improvement works as set out in tables 3.12. All in favour? Okay, thank you very much indeed. Right. Now move on to item 7.5, page 45. Bradford Springs Management Plan Improvement Works approval of tender specification. Would you or Phil like to comment on this one, Carl?
Yeah, Chair. Just to say, yeah, my esteemed colleague Phil will take the will lead on the rest of the items, and I might chip in. But Phil's very much the expert. We'll apply the pressure
Okay.
on. He's very much the expert on all these ones.
Okay, off you go, Phil.
Thank you, Chair. The committee members will recall that at the beginning of this year, they approved the reviewed Bradford Springs Management Plan, which is a 3-year plan for the next 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And this report presents the tender specification for the first year of the works outlined within the management plan. I think that the tender itself outlines relatively clearly what it is that is required, and the committee is being asked to approve that tender tonight.
Okay. I have read all this, but I haven't memorized it. Is one of the things we're looking at, this was in part raised by Councillor Hill at the turn of the year when we had all that rain and all the pathways near the little bridge that goes over the river on the pathway through to Batford, that many of the pathways down there were sort of waterlogged and very muddy and all that sort of stuff. Is it our plan, either within this one or future ones, to do something about those paths?
So, Chair, this tender specification actually relates to more to bank works around the chalk springs, very close to the area that you're talking about. In fact, right adjacent next to it, and also the excavation of channels amongst the reed bed there as well, which means that there will be, in effect, ditches with water in all the year round between the reeds, which will benefit them ecologically. But the question you raised there about the path is that Herts County Council, although I haven't got a date, that particular path that leads from the footbridge past towards the ford, going past the
playground. Yeah.
That path is going to be done by Herts County Council.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. That should resolve the situation. Yeah. Okay. Very, very good. Right. Is there anything else you want to tell us about the tender spec?
I'm available for questions, Chair. I don't think there's anything else that specific that I need to point out. I did notice that Councillor Hill put his hand up just now.
Okay. I can't see Councillor Hill. Oh, yes, I can. Right, Councillor Hill, off you go.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think I'd seen something about the pathway improvement in one of the information bulletins a few weeks ago. So that's good news from Herts County Council. Just a question on the tender. Given the work affects the river itself, do we need to go through the Environment Agency on getting this approval, or their sort of thoughts or recommendations, or is it just we can just do it ourselves?
Chair, the answer to that is that it depends on what distance the works are from the main river, Lee. If the chalk stream was so far away from the river that it wasn't within the 8 metres that requires an Environment Agency permit, then we could just get on and do the works. But the answer is that this is going to need an Environment Agency work permit because it is close enough to the River Lee to require that.
Okay, and we're anticipating that the work we're going to do will be approved and in accordance with their sort of guidelines, are we?
Yes, Chair, and in fact we currently have 2 other Environment Agency permits in force for other works that are happening down there. One of them being the boardwalk and the other one being the river repairs that we intend to carry out. Right,
so we're pretty familiar with their requirements.
We are, Chair, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any other comments from committee members?
Chair, could I add a comment?
Yeah, please.
Just based on a couple of questions. So first of all, I just want to make the committee aware that Phil's probably undersold the role that he and Karen have done in getting the external funding for some of the pathways. I think it's fair to say they've been very, very persuasive with colleagues in other authorities to get some funding reallocated from other schemes. So that is a real achievement. And as this committee knows, pathways aren't cheap. And so the investment is, quite a lot of money that we're getting done. That means we don't have to do it. So the team done really, really well on that. And just the other thing to flag, the mention of the Environment Agency, and I'll be careful what I say, but I think it's fair to say that over the years we've learned a lot of lessons that about working with the Environment Agency, and that early engagement is really, really key. And I think it's safe to say that if we legally don't require to engage with them on permits, we won't, because it saves a lot of time and grey hairs. But actually, where it's good practice to do so, we always will do, no matter the impact on the timeline.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Any further comments from the committee members? Okay, doesn't look like it. So 2.1, the committee is asked to approve the tender set out in Appendix A. All in favour? Thank you very much. Right, so we now move on to the next one. 7.6, which is on page 61. So, the volunteers policy. I know we've used quite a few volunteers in the past, or what I say made use of, taking advantage of their expertise, particularly, including particularly the Batford Springs guys. Is there a sort of a specific reason why we're sort of going through developing a policy of this kind? I mean, I think it's quite a good idea, but are there any sort of specific actions or legislation or whatever which is causing us to come up with this policy?
I think the main thing, Chair, is that, as you've identified, the Town Council have used volunteers for a number of years. In recent years, they've increased, so we've used the Project A volunteers that do the work on the common and help look after that. We've now got the Snow Angel scheme, and that they have increased in numbers this winter. We're looking forward to the Litter Angel scheme, so there'll be more volunteers coming on board. And it just seems to be right that the council should have a formalised volunteer policy to make sure that we've actually thought about everything that we need to have considered in relation to volunteers. So that's why it's come forward now, and that's why the committee are being asked to consider approving it.
Okay. I think it's a good idea. I think it's great that people want to volunteer for things that interest them, and of course it leverages the council's resources and enables us to move forward on things which otherwise might not get done. So I'm certainly in favour of that. Just one small point. I chaired the grants panel at the district council for a number of years And one of the things I tried to do was to make sure that our requirements, our service agreements and all that sort of stuff, were not too heavy for small charities, which don't have the resources, to complete an awful lot of paperwork before they can get, a small grant allocation. Because there are a lot of those charities around, and they do a lot of very good work, but they just don't have, the people to actually do a complicated compliance with rules exercise. So what we did, we tiered it so that the top people, the Citizens Advice Bureau and all those guys, you'd expect them to be able to do it perfectly. And then a middle tier, and then a little tier. And we had very small requirements for the lowest tier. And the thinking behind this was that, we didn't want to put off small charities from applying for grants, because they do a lot of really good work, but they're small. They just haven't got the people resources. Is anything like that sort of applicable here? Or are we sort of looking at volunteers, just, any volunteers or any organisations?
So I think, Chair, that as this policy is specific to the Harpenden Town Council volunteers, that it doesn't, for example, at this time include the Batford Springs volunteers, who are their own separate organisation.
Okay.
But coming back to your question about different tiers, different roles, different types of volunteers might need a little bit more than what other particular roles would have. And an example I'd give there is that if the volunteers are involved working with young people or vulnerable adults, such as at the Dementia Cafe is one example, then they would need a higher level of security check. But apart from that, we tried to keep the bureaucracy to a minimum. There is a certain level. So people like the Snow Angels and things, they have to have signed up their risk assessment. They have to have seen the sheet on manual handling and things like that. But they're sort of the basic requirements that go with that type of role.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Any other comments from committee members?
You've got Councillor Priggen, Chair.
Councillor Priggen, I can't see you on my screen.
That's okay, thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you very much for that. I think that's quite good actually to have it written out. The one thing that struck me that isn't in there, and I don't know if that's meant to be in there, you alluded to it briefly, is what if organisations contact you? So, for example, and this is something we do, my particular scout group go once a year to Batford Springs and cut some grasses, I think with help, well, it's probably with help from the Batford Springs volunteers actually that they relate to, I don't actually know. But things like that, if we were to organise a litter pick with the scout group or with whichever other sort of similar community group, would that fit into this? Or is this just aimed at individuals?
This is largely aimed at individuals, and there are role profiles for the particular volunteer roles. I'm thinking about what you're sort of suggesting there, I suppose falls more within, rather than somebody signing up to be a volunteer on a regular basis to the town council, it's where a group such as you've identified, the Scouts, or perhaps somebody like the Lions or the Rotary Club or the Round Table come forward wanting to do a litter pick or some other form of community service. And at the minute, they're considered to be a separate category to volunteers who would be registered as our volunteers.
Chair, could I just add to that as well?
Yeah, sure.
That's okay. Yeah. So the way I see it in a real kind of boring terms is that this policy relates to volunteers that are our responsibility and that are our risk and that we have liability. The sorts of groups that so Scouts and others that we very happy to work with and to support, the risk and the liability of the individuals that are taking part in that activity doesn't sit with the town council, and therefore isn't applicable to this policy. So it's where we have risk and liability from that sense.
Okay, Councillor Brigham.
Thanks for that. That's really clear. I was just wondering if that's the case. I mean, all you really need as a voluntary group is a contact detail. Maybe is it worth just sticking that on somewhere that you know, okay, this is the email I contact, but for the rest, it's our group and it doesn't fall within that policy.
So, Chair, I think if the suggestion is that we more formally promote the contacts, the officer contacts at the council for volunteer groups, we can certainly do that. This particular policy is more an internal policy, but we can certainly publicise more who the people to contact are should a community group wish to get involved in something across our town. And that name, I say with a smile, will be Phil. So I'm very happy to promote that.
That'll be lovely contacts, I'm sure. But that would be great, actually, because I know we've been digging around for a while and it comes down to me because I would know how to find you guys, but not everybody always does. So that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments? Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed Duke of Edinburgh students. Is there something specific for volunteers who are under the age of 18 regarding, safeguarding or whatever?
Yes, Chair. The answer for that is that, in fact, when we're intending resuming our Duke of Edinburgh sessions as soon as the rules enable us to do so, and in line with what Councillor Hill just asked there, we need 2 people with enhanced security clearance or criminal records bureau checks to actually be present with those particular groups.
Okay, I do remember during my last tenure as mayor, the painting of that little bridge down at Batford Springs. That was volunteers, wasn't it? Edinburgh, Duke of Edinburgh volunteers.
Yes, Chair. They were arranged specifically by the Prince's Trust.
Oh, okay. Okay. So really it'd be their responsibility rather than ours. As
yes, Chair, that's correct.
Carl was commenting on earlier. Okay. Okay. Any other comments from the committee? Can't see anybody. Okay, so we are asked at 2.1 to approve the volunteers policy. All in favour? Thank you very much. What's the next one? Snow Angels.
So, Chair, if it helps, the committee is now going to be asked, or now needs to be asked, to resolve to move into exempt business formally.
Yeah, got to that now. Thank you. Do I need to read this out? It says, I think I probably do, don't I?
So, Chair, you don't need to. I mean, if you're happy with, on the following basis, the committee is asked to resolve to move into exempt business given the confidential nature of the next items. That should be suffice if you're happy to take a vote on that basis, Chair.
Okay. Can we move into exempt business, committee members?
Excellent.
Thank you.